Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. And with that, I will ask, do we have any declarations of interest? Nope, not seeing any. Thank you. And can I get a mover and seconder to adopt the agenda for this evening? Thank you very much. So seeing Janice and seconded by Councillor O'Hare. Okay, and can I get a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? I'll call, sorry, has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes, or do we need to pull them up? I think we're good. Okay, so can I get a mover and a seconder? So Andrew, the mover, seconder. Janice? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Terrific, thank you very much. And that passes. Okay, so we're moving to item 6.1, and it's correspondence, and this is from the committee recruitment. So the Clerk's Department reopened recruitment for vacant committees and boards during the month of February. New committee and board members will be selected by Council on March 19th, 2024. So do we have an update with that with regard to the amount of submissions, Matthew, for this committee?
Yeah, so we had one submission, Madam Chair. So that is going through as recommended to Council for appointment on the 19th. So once that's gone into closed session and Council has an opportunity to review it, they can make those appointments and open, and then we can advise the committee and the member after the fact. So by the 20th, everyone should know.
Okay, that's terrific. Any questions related to that appointment? Councillor O'Hare?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question, and this might be directed through you to Matthew. Matthew, is it possible that we could send out an invitation to the Indigenous community? I don't know if that has ever been done before, but it might be a nice step on our part.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, we have reached out previously without any specific response, but knowing just where we at with committees in general, I think we're going to plan, assuming that we will have additional vacancies for the fall, a new recruitment process again in August through September. And hopefully plan up some better advertisements for that we can circulate to the wider communities, including local Indigenous community and local community groups as well, and not just this committee, but overall committees in general.
Great, thank you.
And Matthew, a question: are we doing targeted approaches? So. Councillor O'Hare's question just leads me to think about a strategized approach to racialized communities, LGBTQ+, different ability communities. Is there an opportunity to look at engaging with those stakeholders through the different committees that already exist?
It's a great question, and I completely agree. I think we could do more to better target some of this advertising, both through other municipalities to get their help in getting the word out. And if this committee has feedback on that they would like to provide, we can certainly make that an item at maybe a future meeting before we do that and just have a sort of a more general discussion on it.
Okay, I think that's terrific. Any thoughts from the group around that? Yeah, Councillor O'Hare?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's a great idea, great suggestion. The more word we can get out, this is a new committee, so we're kind of learning, we're learning to walk with baby steps, but it certainly would be wonderful if we could get a much greater diverse representation. So whatever can be done, I fully support that.
All right, terrific, thank you. Okay, with that, we will move to item 6.2, which is an update on the declaration of emergency for homelessness, mental health, and addictions that passed at Council on February 6, 2024. So Matthew, the update.
Yeah, so Madam Chair, this was a recommendation out of the Fire and Emergency Services Department with support with our SMT. The purpose of the original declaration was really to elevate the issue to Niagara Region, given the fact that the City of Thorold doesn't particularly have the jurisdiction in this area to provide the specific services. The recommendation really was focused on declaring the emergency to highlight that issue for the region in hopes that they would then make the declaration themselves, because they, again, receive the funding for mental health, for homelessness, and to some extent, some of the addictions work. They did declare the declaration themselves in 2023, and after some review and some information that we provided back to council, the thought was it's time to sort of withdraw the declaration, because with it does come some mandatory reporting requirements through the city's emergency operations or emergency management organization or group. So the declaration in the city was canceled, but it was sort of rephrased as it is still a crisis in the city of Thorold, with an encouragement both of members of council, the representatives from the city of Thorold who sit on Niagara Region, namely the mayor and our regional councillor, as well as city staff, to continue to push for this and to ensure that we are doing our best to advocate for this issue as a crisis in the city with Niagara Region and encouraging better services for the residents of Thorold.
That's fantastic. Questions or feedback from the group related to that matter?
Oh, sorry, my hand's up, but I don't know.
Oh, go ahead, Janice. Sorry. You know what? It's like it's blending into your background a little bit. So
okay, no problem.
No, it's fine. I see it now that you called attention. So if I don't see it, please just call me out. Go ahead.
I was just wondering if there's anything specific that we could be doing as a committee to try to help these matters.
Through you, Madam Chair, I think the best thing the committee can do is, if they see specific issues or are aware of specific issues affecting the community and local residents, to please identify that for us. The committee itself can certainly highlight those for council, and council can certainly flag them formally through the council process by, requesting that the mayor send letters to the region, or specifically highlighting that same issue for a regional councillor to raise it at the Public Health and Community Services Committee or at Regional Council.
And I think, there's been a lot of talk about the addictions piece, and we're seeing an increase in overdoses in many communities throughout Ontario. So I think, from my perspective, that's where I'd like to really see the needle move. And of course, homelessness and mental illness. But I think the epidemic around addictions is something that's really prevalent and top of mind in the communities that, surround Niagara Region and in Thorold. So, if we have any thoughts or ideas around that, I think that's a really great starting point too.
Well, one thing is, a lot of the issues why those happen is people aren't happy. It's mental health usually is the big thing, and we need to do more mental health help. And especially got bad during the pandemic, because that was one of the things that really suffered, is there was not much help for people with mental health.
Right. Any other thoughts related to this item? Oh. Cam, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, sorry. One thing that I think needs to be highlighted when talking about mental health crisis in Niagara and the province and Canada in general, there are resources out there. I just think that lots of people are unaware of what they have access to. So, putting an emphasis on publicly stating or sharing the resources that are available throughout the Niagara region, different organizations that are here to help, that do have government funding and support, that the region works with directly, that are community health centers. There are resources out there, but making sure that people know what they are, rather than just having them listed somewhere on a website. Actively sharing those resources among social media or campaigns, so that people are aware of phone numbers they can call, of counselors they can get a hold of, and so on.
That's a fantastic point, Cam. Janice, go ahead.
I was just going to mention too that we should consider accessibility issues because not everybody has access to the internet and to be able to, you know, see those reportings that way. So trying to think about other ways to get kind of the word out that's not necessarily just, you know, online.
Mhm. Is there a way for us, Matthew, then I guess to feed that feedback through to that group who are leading this work? Oh, you just
So
saw me.
certainly, if there are, I think specific things that we want to draw the group's attention to, whether it's highlighting specific resources or perhaps we need more resources or more attention to those resources specifically in Thorold. Absolutely, the committee can certainly pass motions highlighting that would just be asking council to request this information from the region or from community services. Again, we're limited in our jurisdiction here because we don't
Yeah.
have authority over the services, but absolutely we can highlight those issues either individually by reaching out to the region, by asking the council do it, or by the individually reaching out to either the mayor or our regional councillor who do sit on those committees and can sort of raise those issues firsthand.
Okay, Councillor O'Hara?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of points. That's really good observation, Cam, regarding you know, access to some of the available groups that can assist people who are searching out these support groups. And of course, as you said, Janice, not everyone's connected to the internet, so a lot of people can drop off without being able to connect. And so a couple of things we can keep in mind here, or a couple of things that I might suggest is if we can together as a committee create a list of available sources where there's information available, support available, then we can also discuss how we can get that information out to residents, including perhaps connecting with the library, perhaps including with TCAG and getting some available space to advertise some of these things, including a possible digital bulletin board that the city is looking at that can announce areas, phone numbers, help where residents might be searching for things that they have no idea of where to reach out to. So these are great suggestions, and maybe we should talk about this as a committee, how we can compile a list of some of these groups that Cam has spoken about so that the word is spread out throughout the community to a much greater degree. So I don't know if we need to create a working group or if we can just combine our knowledge and send in names of groups that we can compile this list from, and then maybe create some sort of poster format or some sort of advertisement that can go out into the community. So,
So I know through the municipalities, Councillor O'Hare, there is that referral. So previously they were the LHINs. I don't know the status of the LHINs right now. And I'm thinking, you know, there may be organizations that have compiled this information. So how do we then promote those resources and organizations? I am cognizant of us kind of duplicating these lists that may already exist. But I think we can definitely tap into them. And to your point, look at opportunities to put them on the digital billboards, perhaps hard copy, because again, if you're in the throes of addiction or homelessness or what have you, you may not have access to a device. So how do we disseminate that information in alternative formats? I'll give it to Cam and then Councillor O'Hare if you want to weigh in on both of our points there. So Cam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor O'Hare, just a few in my work experience, a few of the resources that I look for when I'm making referrals for clients and people in the region that are looking for any kind of resource, whether it be mental health, addictions, anything like that. If I'm concerned and I'm trying to find the appropriate referral location, 211 Ontario is a great resource online. It's essentially just a list of multiple programs that are available within your region. There is the HNHB Niagara link as well. I believe the website is called hnhbhealthline.ca, excuse me. And again, that's just another resource that already has this list or multiple lists. You hopefully would see some overlapped resources on whether you're on 211 or on the HNHB website. Lastly, if you were to reach out to social workers or community workers within the Niagara region, they would be who I reach out personally, during my work for any questions with resources throughout the region, because they would have that pre-populated or that pre-created list. So rather than going through the hours and the hours and the hours to try and manually come up with that list, there might be a quicker way. And it would just be highlighting the resources that are already available on those lists, right? And making sure that we are sharing that list with everybody in a way that, to Janice's point, everybody would be able to receive it, whether it's a mail letter or news. Email's not always the way to go, or social media campaigns and stuff like that. But whether it's a physical piece of paper in the mail, just highlighting the available resources in Thorold might be appropriate.
Another option for the.
Sorry, Andrew. I'm going to hand it to Councillor O'Hare. Oh, do you? And then over to you, Andrew, after.
Just a quick thing.
Cam, I think that's a great suggestion. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, of course, but if we can combine the expertise of some of the groups already in operation, then maybe we can put that to our use's greater effect. So yeah, good suggestion.
Right. Thank you, Councillor O'Hare. Andrew?
I was just saying that when you mail, another option for digital would be placed in places that people, community hubs where people might end up, places like have some of these resources mentioned, have copies at like the library and the activities group and like the city hall and stuff.
Okay.
Places like that where people can get to.
That's a great idea.
Having digital things there just so people can get the information. So
I'll pose a question to the group. Does this then become a working group to organize the liaison with the existing organizations that we do want to promote to make a recommendation to the region? Matthew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think if the committee wants to go that way, absolutely, that's a great idea. Maybe use the next month to sort of pull together an initial list that we could put on the May agenda. And what I could even do is I could reach out to community services at the region and see if somebody might be available to come and do a presentation and then even provide comment on that list. I can guarantee that someone will be available, but we can always ask.
Okay, so Matthew, can I ask then through community services, because again, they may have a fulsome list of these organizations. Are you able to reach out to them to find out if that's like, I think we need the presentation irregardless. So maybe that's the starting point in the presentation, and then finding out if they have a list and then how we as a committee can promote that.
Yeah, we can do that. We can ask if they have something that they could provide if they can't provide the presentation, and ask them to make it sort of Thorold centric. Anything high level and specific to Thorold at the same time that the committee can kind of look at and then recommend back to staff that we do our best to, again, publicize and share.
Okay, that's terrific. Any questions about that proposed direction? Oh, not seeing any. All right, terrific. Thank you very much. Okay, so then moving on to item 7.1. It is the policy working group. Any discussions or updates around that? Councillor O'Hare?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. sadly, no, there has not been any progress on that. I've done some reading, but we really haven't met as a working group. So I'm wondering if we need to reestablish that to move this forward, because it is a lot of work. I'd like to make sure that we're, again, not spending so much time on things that have already been devised for other municipalities. Fort Erie has done a wonderful job. We spoke about that. So can I ask again, because I think we lost a member of the working group, who would like to commit to the working group, and then maybe we can refocus and try to get that rolling again. So through you,
Councillor
Madam Chair,
O'Hare, can you provide an overview of the working group and what we're looking for by way of participation?
Mm-hmm. So I can imagine, Madam Chair, that we would probably need every couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, to go over some of the research that we have extracted from some of the other policies that neighboring municipalities already have in place. Some municipalities have immense documents, and it's very challenging to get through them. So if we could break it down into some of the more accessible areas, then perhaps we can already start to create a bit of a shape and form to what we want Thorold's policy to look like. So most of the work would be individual, just amassing or collecting some sort of ideas and then meeting together and sharing those ideas and seeing if we can simplify and start to shape it into a bit of a policy direction. So that's a lot of words for, just getting the ball rolling, basically.
Can I make a suggestion? So I was on Niagara Region's committee that developed a policy. Matthew, is it possible to have Cassie or a member of that group do a presentation for us in terms of the direction that they took and the approach? And I think that will help to inform us on how to complete this, because that was done within the term of the committee, which it wasn't a full year, and we were able to accomplish that. So maybe some guidance in terms of how we can get the ball rolling with that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that would be a wonderful idea, because it is daunting.
It is. It's we're like trying to boil the ocean a bit. So I think if we can get some strategic advice on how to go about this. And yeah, I was a part of the crew, but I don't know the pieces that were put in place prior to and the pre-work that they had done. So if we can get some direction in terms of how we start to form this work, I think that would be great.
Mm-hmm.
So Matthew, are you able to action that with Niagara Region?
Yep, I'll reach out and provide the invite to Cassie and see if we can bring her in for a presentation.
Awesome. Any questions or feedback related to that? Nope. Okay, I'm not seeing any. I think we're good. Okay, so moving on to the work plan strategic plan working group. Any discussions or updates? So I don't even know who's leading that work, and I think it is connected a bit to the policy working group. I think looking at kind of directives and strategic plan. So any updates? Anyone leading that? Matthew, do you know if we had anyone appointed to that work?
I don't believe we do at present.
Okay.
So we might want to do that. But what I will add is, of course, as the city is embarking on its strategic plan initiative right now, the organization that's leading that for us and facilitating it is going to be reaching out to the committee chairs and vice chairs, asking for additional input.
Okay.
So I might recommend that we leave you as the main contact at present. But just advise that everybody please go and look at the surveys that are out right now, asking for information on what direction the region or the city should be taking, and sort of how to direct any of that work towards the DEI initiatives.
I agree with that approach, and I've completed a survey on the city. It actually came to my email, but if you go to the website, you will be able to complete some of that information. So yeah, I agree with that approach. Any concerns or feedback with that? No, not seeing any. Okay, moving on then to item 7.3, the Niagara DEI Community of Practice. Any updates or discussion around this? Matthew?
Yeah, so I can just provide an initial update. There was a meeting on February 13th of the Community of Practice, pretty well attended, both are in person, this particular meeting. It was centered around a panel discussion of sort of the four of the larger organizations in Niagara. So it included Niagara Region, Brock University, Niagara College, and the DSBN. They sort of talked about their experience as really getting diversity, equity, and inclusion sort of on the map in terms of strat planning and policy building and all of this. So it was really high level. But what they did focus on was the idea of DEI needs to be part of the strategic plan in order to drive some of these initiatives within the organizations. And once they had that, that's where they were able to really get a lot of the work off the ground. Their steps after that was done included priority projects of conducting surveys. So you'll probably be aware of or remember that Niagara Region had conducted some region-wide surveys on what is important to the residents of Niagara when it comes to DEI, as well as learning a lot more about the communities within Niagara and trying to gather that data. Once they had done that, what happened was they created some internal committees as well as the external DEI committees. So there was a staff working group to talk about sort of the work environment with representatives from each department, just sort of being able to advise on the goals and needs of those departments. And then that information can come back to committees like this that can advise council on the best way to go forward with a policy. So that's sort of the track that they took, but a lot of that really does hinge on the direction of council through its strat plan, which is just, again, highlighting the appointment of the last item of getting that feedback in if where the committee wants that direction to go. But it was a really good meeting, some really good discussion. Currently, Niagara Region was talking about, they have over 30 tasks or items and goals that they're working on through their plan. They're currently developing or completing them is what they had said. But a lot of these tasks really deal with practicing allyship, anti-racism, inclusive leadership, sustainability in the workplace, understanding different religious beliefs and spirituality. And a lot of these come in form of specific tasks like their identification cards for staff, including an option to allow them to have their name in their language other than English underneath the English name. So just little things that allow for that inclusivity, but these are the projects that they're working on and how they're creating a more inclusive environment for staff.
That's awesome. So can I ask, Matthew, translating that, I guess, to Thorold then, what does that process look like?
So that's a great question. And I think part of it really does need to come on council's priorities. So assuming that diversity, equity, and inclusion become part of that plan, that does allow us to assign specific projects to it. Now, that doesn't mean the work of this committee can't still drive some of that. For example, the development of a DEI policy for the city, which sets some either goals or initiatives for us to work towards. And identifying some of those. And I think this committee can drive some of that work as well. But it would then lead to the creation of similar internal committees or at minimum working directly with human resources team to kind of where can we start to apply this policy in sort of more meaningful action for staff. So it's kind of the two-sided. This committee is looking at, you know, how are we supporting the community and ensuring that the services and programs that the city are offering to its residents have that DEI lens, but it's also looking internally, how are we working with staff and creating an inclusive environment for the work environment.
And in terms of prioritization, I think, you know, from the city of Thorold, what is the preferred approach? Is it looking at community first or staff first, or, you know, where does that reside?
So I think at present, the mandate really is to for the committee to identify the needs internally through that policy. I think that's one of its main goals of this committee is getting that working group up and running and recommending to council what a good policy could look like for Thorold.
Okay.
And there, I think using the rest of the term and any subsequent terms to where there are gaps that are identified, how do we recommend council sort of correct those? And those can be internal or external. So it could be looking at the city programs, the community services and parks. If we find a way to improve that through a DEI lens, let's do that. But I think if we have that policy, that will allow staff to take direction from it and bring issues directly to this committee from an internal side. So this committee itself might be highlighting issues from the residential piece. And then if we have an internal policy, then staff can identify issues from the internal piece for this committee to discuss and provide advice on.
Any questions or feedback around that information? No, I think it's a good approach. So it gives more credence to that policy working group. And I think in terms of priorities, we definitely want to get this work off of the ground. And I think that presentation will serve us well. Okay, moving to item 7.4, and this is accessible entrances. So I know this is something that Andrew, you had raised previously in terms of people being able to go into stores in Thorold and different entrances.
Wasn't just me, Councillor O'Hare also said stuff as well.
Correct, yes, yeah. So any updates around this? Any thoughts, discussion? Councillor O'Hare?
Yeah, I think we were going to hear from Matthew, the clerk's department, regarding whether or not there were some funds to support this. So maybe we can ask for an update there, Madam Chair.
Matthew, over to you.
Yeah, so first thing we did was we reached out to our Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee just to see if there was any past work done in this area or anything that was raised by the community from their perspective. And although nothing has previously been raised through that committee, our coordinator for the JAAC did identify that she was aware of it and thought it was a great program and that there was some value in it. In terms of funding, there may be some funding through the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee budget line item that we could do this. We would just basically need direction from council to use some of those funds, almost treating it like a community grant. So if a business was interested in this and wanted to get on board with some assistance from the city, council could set up that kind of fund, perhaps, offering to pay for a ramp in itself or part of a ramp or anything along those lines. Could be set up again through the community grants program or directly using these funds. Now, they're not set aside for that in the budget, but if this committee thought that was something we should pursue, they could recommend to council that they look into it and get some information from staff.
Councillor O'Hare?
Great, that sounds wonderful. Maybe what we should do is start with an inventory of downtown businesses that may need a stopgap addition to allow full accessibility. So I'd be willing to be a part of that. Maybe Andrew, would you be interested in joining me and we could do a walk through downtown and look at some
maybe.
of the... Yep, okay. So we can, Madam Chair, through you, I don't know if you want me to email Andrew directly or through you, or how we could set something up, what would be a good way to proceed?
Yeah, I think, Matthew, if it's okay, they can email directly. Do they need a CC to anyone?
Nope.
No.
Okay.
And we'll
All
make
right.
that a line item in the next meeting, Madam Chair, then, so that they have an opportunity to report back in May and the committee can consider at that point.
That works.
Great. That works. So Andrew, I'll email you, and if some dates work out, we can just meet and walk through the downtown and take a look at some possible places that might need them. Great.
There's definitely probably a dozen or so.
Okay.
That's just a guesstimate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so moving on to item 8, roundtable discussion. So there is something I would like to table. Our discussions around accessibility and city connectivity and sidewalks, I noticed, was picked up by the Thorold Today newspaper. So following up on that, I think this is an existing issues for a lot of the new developments in Thorold in terms of having sidewalks, having playgrounds, having You know, I think opportunities for engagement of community members and that accessibility piece. So I'm not sure where we kind of landed on that per our last discussion, and if we have an opportunity to follow that up in terms of areas that we identified of lacking in resources of that community connectivity and walkability. And any thoughts from the group around that? Because I see this becoming a burgeoning problem as more people are moving in to the city and into the region. It's I'm increasingly seeing people walking along live roads, which is a danger. And there is really a disconnect in terms of accessibility with people being able to get to jobs and to you know, different areas, whether it's community services or what have you. So thoughts from the group, Councillor O'Hare?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm happy to report that when a new development or new developer comes to council to present their ideas about a new subdivision, top of the list are 3 questions that always get asked. Of course, number 1 is parking, because we do have a parking issue throughout Thorold. But number 2 is very often, will there be sidewalks? We need to have sidewalks in these subdivisions. So it's being brought to the forefront more and more often. So that's very important. And from several councillors, including myself, it's really important that there be green space, whether it is parkland or green space with benches or trails, something where communities that are a little bit more remote have a place to get outside and enjoy the area that they're living in. We can't just have homes beside homes and apartment buildings beside apartment buildings. We need green spaces. So these are constantly coming up. I'd like to, you know, this is something we can also address in the strategic plan, is to make sure that we have enough and continue to inspire developers to add them. When they hear that it is a request, they very often do try to work with planning and try to improve the amount of green space, and certainly sidewalks. That's been also a very hot topic at council. So I think council is doing quite a good job and will continue to keep pushing for these things. Sometimes it's a matter of what the developers want to invest into their developments, and we just have to keep hammering it home that we need them and we want them.
Thank you for that. Over to Janice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to add on that I think a lot of things were kind of stalled too due to the pandemic, and they're just starting to kind of pick up, because I know the new park that just went in near my house, it had been scheduled for years, but it just like recently started to like develop, and we're waiting for parking spaces to come in there so that people don't have to park on the street. But I'm wondering if some of the issues are simply delays because of, you know, the pandemic and how everything kind of came to a halt.
Yeah, that's a really good comment. Councillor O'Hare, if I can put you on the spot because you're privy to some of this information.
Oh, certainly. No, certainly. One thing that irritates me about the new developments is that the playground and green space gets added last.
Yes.
And, you know, during the campaign, I walked through many neighborhoods and would see masses of children playing on the streets because the playgrounds hadn't been put in yet. I think we have that backwards. We should have the playgrounds first so that we know that the kids are safe. We should have the paths and the green spaces there available, even to the early tenants or residents if the development isn't completed, not at the end. I mean, look how long it took to get, and I don't know, Janice, if you're referring to the one up on Merritt Highway. The entire development was complete, done, finished, and then they put in the playground. Wonderful to have it, but I wish it would have gone the other way, that the playground would have been there in the beginning. So these are things we need to work out with developers, with planners, and say, this is priority, this is important, let's get it right.
Janice, over to you.
I'm just going to bounce off of that. I completely agree. My daughter's now 5, and when we moved in, it was like, oh, the playground's going to be in, and year after year, we're waiting for the playground, and then finally the playground went in. There's still pieces that they need to put together, but yeah, there's no parking, and there's 2 basic, like almost like different subdivisions that have been completed, and then finally the playground went in. Yeah.
Andrew?
This is back what I was trying to say last time a bit, is that we should have them do certain things once they reach a certain point. So they should do it like, I understand not doing it at the very beginning, but once you get, let's say, 10% done, do
Yeah.
it, sort of thing. Just because I understand that like a 10 sort of percent into it. That way most people get a use of it.
Right. Agreed. And, selfishly, I will call out, I'm going to piggyback off of you, Janice. So I am at Merritt and Kottmeyer in the Empire development, and they've made substantial headway in terms of development. However, there's no playground. So A, you've got no playground, there's no resources for the children. And then B, you are cut off because of the infrastructure of Merritt from walking into Welland, into the city. So there's no sidewalk connectivity, and there are people walking across, live lanes of traffic. So Councillor O'Hare, I don't know if this is a message you can bring forward, but there's certainly concerns about these developers and the lack of infrastructure that's being provided. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And this is through you to Matthew. I don't know, can this committee make a suggestion to council that planners or planning department encourage earlier development of playground settings prior to completing the entire subdivision? Is that something within our mandate, or is that overstepping?
So it's mandate, I suppose, is questionable in terms of the grand scheme of things, but speaking about accessibility and sort of a desire for it, I don't think there's anything wrong with flagging that. Certainly just having it identified as an issue from multiple sources, again, there's no concerns with that. So certainly having the discussion and putting it in the minutes and asking that they, look into it, I think in itself is a good comment that this committee can make. In terms of actionable items, again, recommending even that issue be flagged for things like the Parks, Trails and Recreation Committee, and that they also comment on it. That's one thing that the committees could certainly do, is flag it for them and say, hey, we've identified that this is an issue, just again for accessibility for residents and ability to enjoy the neighborhoods that they're creating. And they have a little bit more jurisdiction to sort of speak to staff about it.
Okay. One thing I would like to capture as part of the minutes is I think when we're looking at a mandate for this committee is that we want Thorold to be a livable city. And, regardless of your respective state or, whatever obstacles you may have, we want it to be livable for everyone. And part of that is the accessibility. So I just want to capture that as we venture down this work, that we want Thorold to be a livable city for all who choose to reside here.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Okay. Any other thoughts related to this item before we move on? Nope. Okay, any more roundtable discussions? Any points anyone wants to raise? Matthew?
Just a quick one. We received the summary of significant dates provided by Niagara Region on a monthly basis. So I just wanted to flag the ones for March. There are quite a few. Of course, March 8th is International Women's Day. Tomorrow, that's right. Starting on March 20th, it's International Francophonie Day, so Bonne Journée Internationale de la Francophone. There is World Water Day and National Indigenous Language Day and International Transgender Day of Visibility, both on March 31st. In terms of religious dates, it's also the one that they are choosing to highlight throughout the month from Niagara Region is Ramadan which I believe begins on March 11th or 12th, as the date sort of determined, I think, by the setting of the new moon. But it is the beginning of the celebrations, which is the holiest month for Islam. So that starts this month, but there are quite a few dates, of course, as you go throughout the month, including 2-month-long observances for March, which are Greek Heritage Month and Irish History Month. So just a few of the dates that we wanted to highlight as they get circulated by Niagara Region and their DEI group.
And also
Andrew?
at the end, also it's like Easter's coming up as well or something.
Yes, absolutely. So Matthew, if you can let us know if there are flag raisings or opportunities for us to be present. I will apologize. I've been not available, but certainly as our schedules free up and clear up, if you wanted to share those with us, if you think our presence would be beneficial to represent the committee, please share those as well.
Absolutely. We'll forward those as they come up.
Terrific. Okay. So any other items for roundtable? Not seeing any. I just really want to acknowledge, we are a small group tonight, but I feel like we're a small but mighty group. We tackled a lot of information, and I think we had really robust and, very fulsome conversation. So I'm proud of that as a group. And I just want to thank you all for your participation as we've seen kind of wavering membership. And I just encourage, continuation and participation of this group, because I think we have addressed concerns, and I think we can move the needle forward with a lot of that work. So just thank you for giving up your time and your energy to volunteering and, providing really valuable dialogue. So just want to end it on that note. If anyone else has anything to add, please take the time now. Okay. So our next meeting is scheduled for May 2nd, and that is at the same time. So it will be 6 p.m. And just thank you all. And with that, we will conclude the meeting for tonight. So I will say that the meeting has been adjourned at 6:48 p.m. Okay.
Thank you to you two for everything you do.